Good morning. A few weeks ago, I didn't do a Facebook Live because I was praying about an important decision. And that really brings me to a question for you. I want to ask you this today. How do you make decisions? What do you give priority to? How do you decide if you will or will not do something? Do you have some sort of guidelines that help you determine that? What actions you're going to take, what choices you're going to make. You probably do, whether you realize it or not. So the answer is yes. But I want to kind of have you work through that with me today. About 10 years ago, I took a class. It was called Spiritual Formation. And we had to write what was called a rule of life. And it was 10 years ago. Fortunately, I still have what I had written at that time. You may have never heard of it before. It's basically a set of practices or habits that you're going to attempt to cultivate and it's basically for a spiritual balance or a spiritual rhythm in your life. So I went back and I read what I had written 10 years ago. And I found that most of those things I've been able to do, not all of them, but most of them. But a rule of life helps you cultivate spiritual practices that will allow you to more easily make a decision. At least I think it makes it easier. So this is where I'm going with this today. One of the themes of the book of Judges, which I'm going to be starting a series on this Sunday. You'll see the recordings of those posted, usually sometimes on Sunday, but always on Monday. And one of the themes of that book from the Bible is that every man did what was right in his own eyes. Now that is one way to make a decision. It's probably not a good one, but it is one. And that's what's going on in the book of Judges. We'll unpack that in the weeks ahead. But I have often asked and wondered, how do people who do not believe in God or in the Bible decide what is right and wrong? And maybe they are just doing what the book of Judges says, whatever they feel is right in the moment. I have often, probably not often, but I have suggested that it is confusing to me that people who don't believe in God and the Bible, how do they develop a sense of morality if they're just making it up as they go along? And there's no rhyme or reason on people deciding, let alone agreeing on what is right and wrong. And that's probably a lot of the cause of some of the issues we have today in our world. But I was reading this morning in the book of Romans, and Paul suggests something else. And I guess this was in the back of my mind, but I wanted to bring it up to myself and also to you today. In Romans chapter 2, this is from the New Living Translation, verses 14 and 15, Paul's writing about the Gentiles, but it would apply to us as well, since we are. And he says, the Gentiles who do not have God's written law show that they know his law when they instinctively obey it, even without having heard it. They demonstrate that God's law is written in their hearts, for their own conscience and thoughts either accuse them or tell them they are doing right. Now, I think those verses are pretty clear. Paul's suggesting that people have in them innately a sense of right and wrong, and they either will try to live by their rule of life, they will either try to live by that, or they will be judged by that. So I'm curious, what do you think? Post it in the comments. And really, the second part of that question for me is, so why do we never agree on what is right and wrong if we have this innate sense? And maybe we'll talk about that next week. We may never come back to it again, as I've found. Is when I say that thing on here that, hey, we might come back to that, sometimes I never get back to it. So if I've said something like that and you really wanted to hear me talk about that, go ahead and write that in the comments too, and I will do it if you ask for it. But anyway, not to get too deep in the woods with philosophers, but Immanuel Kant said, he spoke about the starry heavens and the moral law within, and perhaps somebody else's quote or another Bible verse has come to mind for you today. Share that with me in the comments. But I really want to know, what do you think today? Do people have a moral law within us that's just kind of innate that helps us determine right from wrong? So I'll leave you with that today. I'm going to leave you with that question and not summarize anymore for us. Thanks for watching. And we will hopefully be back this week. If not, write it in the comments and I'll definitely get it done. So have a good day. Thanks for watching.